Direct. There we go.
All right, we're recording. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to T3G. This is the Tangents Podcast. I am here today with a very special guest, TJ Sterling of Ray Comics. How are you doing today, sir?
Man, I am doing absolutely fantastic. Tired, overworked, but blessed and highly favored, as they would say.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I know we were gonna do this before the Kickstarter was done to try to boost the last week of the Kickstarter, but you know what? I'm super psyched to have seen that it actually did hit that last stretch goal. I'm so excited for that 8-bit game. Like, dude, I cannot explain to you how excited I am about this property. I actually just read issue 0. I bought issue 0 from your site just so I could like have some knowledge about the property and be able to talk about it with you. So like, I was talking about this on a podcast the other day. I'm so into this property. Like, I begged you to let me pre-buy the last couple issues because they weren't part of the Kickstarter yet. I was like, dude, I gotta have this. I gotta know that I'm gonna have it because that's just like this is the kind of property that is exciting. I mean, obviously, you cracked 20K on the Kickstarter, and it's well deserved, man. Like, the property, like, the artwork is fantastic. The story is dope. I'm super excited. You start issue 0 takes place in the far flung future, and then issue 1 takes a step back.
That's correct.
What made
Absolutely.
you go down that route?
Oh, yeah, man. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for just supporting Ray Comics and believing in it and just, taking a shot on us, man. Because, like I said, there's a million other independent comic book companies out there, and there's so much great, cool content. And, there's so much to choose from. So the fact that you were able to really get into our stuff really means a lot to me as the creator, as the owner, the writer, all that good stuff. And yeah, man, it was a very interesting experience. The Kickstarter itself, which I'm sure we'll get into more later in our conversation, but it's our very first Kickstarter. And I think, it's a testament to not only our diehard fans that we've had over the last 5 years from going to cons and doing shows and free comic book day events and stuff like that. They really showed up for us, but then a ton of people showed up, new people showed up on the Kickstarter platform and really believe in what we're doing, just like you did, and helped us, break over 21K. And so many other cool things are on the way. But to answer your question about issue 0 and then number 1, I'm a huge fan of nonlinear storytelling. I think for me, because I was like this huge, like, I love Tarantino movies growing up.
Yeah.
Like, to me, the way he told stories was just so unexpected, and it kept you guessing, it kept you thinking. I mean, you can still think about a Tarantino movie, especially his earlier one.
Oh yeah.
20 years later, there's still something about them that, like, a mystery, kind of like again, this, it just keeps the brain guessing. And I wanted to do something similar with my books. So issue 0, you see the main character Kale as an old man. Like, well, he's not an old man, but he's like in his late 40s.
Right.
He's a fully fledged hero who's been through a hell of a lot of stuff, and he's basically at the end of his journey. And we kind of, give people an idea of what that the end might look like. We haven't exactly seen the end, but we give an idea of what could actually happen in the end. And then with issue 1, rewind, excuse me, all the way back to when he's a kid in present time before he's got any of his powers at all.
See, that's super cool. I'm a big fan of that process. Like, those are the kind of stories that I love because it getting jumping into the action of it, right? You're like jumping in to, like, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and then it's like 5 days ago, this is what's going on, right? That's my favorite because then it's like, whoa, why is this dude fighting this dude? Like, how did we get here? What is the setup? Because then it gives you this opportunity to, like, explore this universe and explore the characters, and I'm just so excited about it. This is actually, it's funny, I not it wasn't even my idea. It was my cousin's idea back in the day when I was like, hey, like, we're gonna be creating stuff, like, pitch me something, like, what do you want to make? And he came to me with this really really cool idea, and through, like, building it out, I was like, you know what would be dope is if we started with, like, the final fight, and then we just peel back all the layers, and then, like, where it's going, like, the potential of this character. And that's why I like reading this future story, which, and I'll get to the name in a moment because I think that's a really really interesting take as well. um,
Thank
but it's this, like, post-apocalyptic world. I'm gonna pull it up here. I got a few pieces here just pulled from the first issue just to kind of show off. This cover dope. Like you said, it's very much like Sentai inspired, and I'm a Power Rangers nut. Like I shotgun 16 seasons once.
Let's go.
Like so like that when I heard that I was like, yeah, 100%. I'm bought in.
Let's go. I love it.
And but this like post-apocalyptic world, like him walking through just like ruin, and that's the kind of question where there's been a lot of shows in the last 10 years where it's been something post-apocalyptic, but that's always the question, right? Like, how did we get here? What
That's
made this
right.
happen? So like when you have that, and just kind of right out the gate, like first page, we are hundreds of years into the future. We are just out of like completely out of our element. We don't know what's going on, and it's this one guy standing up for what's right and defending people, and I just dig the hell out of that. Now I want to ask you about the name though.
Yes, sir.
It's not his like the name of the book is Okemus. Am I saying that right?
Correct. Spot on.
And it's not his name. That's not his like superhero identity. That's not like obviously his name's Kale. What made you go with that being the name of the series?
Great question, man. I mean, I love speaking about this particular thing, and because really and truly, the essence of everything that we do at Ray Comics is just outside the box. We try to do something. We do everything we do. We try to keep it as unique and different, and just thought provoking as possible. Like again, I'm a person that I like to sit down with an anime or a manga or a comic book or graphic novel, whatever it is, and I want to be intrigued mentally. I just don't want to see a whole bunch of frivolous conversation. I want to see conversation that is, again, thought provoking. I'm like a less is more type of guy.
For sure.
And I think I kind of write that way very intentionally because, like I said, I want people to kind of fill in the gaps. Like I'm painting a picture, but I could sit here and paint absolutely everything. And let's say in this universe, right? Let's say you're painting the picture of a restaurant. You could paint everything in that down to the cracks in the wood on the chairs, but ultimately people can imagine that there's cracks in a wooden chair, even if you just allude to it. So to me, again, keeping the mystery there is definitely something that I've always kind of kept at the forefront. And also doing things outside the box. So Okemus is not actually a person. It's a mythical city complex where all the characters are created. Like let's say Mount Olympus or something like, or
Mm.
something to the effect where it's this massive space, this massive complex where that no one knows where it is. It's shrouded in mystery. It's something that is kind of a seminal point within the story because it's not just about one character, it's about a slew of different types of characters. And the name Okemos itself is really kind of an ode to being from Michigan. And there's a town in Michigan called Okemos with an O instead of a U. And because I'm from Michigan and wanted to kind of play into the fact that I'm from the Midwest, that I love where I'm from, and this was just a way to kind of pay homage to that, but also kind of tweak it just a little bit to make it something completely different and unique.
That's dope. See, I like that little kind of like hometown vibe to it. Then it gives everybody that knows, right? Everybody that's around there, they're like, oh wait, I know that. That's like, is that a city? Like that's my city.
That's
That's where I'm
right.
from. I'm
That's
right
right.
there. So I dig that. I'm a big fan of that. That's why, like, anytime I've found just a weird obsession with stuff that takes place in Chicago. I remember when they announced what was that game, Watch Dogs. When they announced Watch Dogs, and they showed the original cinematic footage and him walking through the city, and I'm like, dude, I've been in these streets. I know
That's right.
this. This is my city. Like I
That's
get
right.
so hyped about it, and did the same thing when they did what was it? The Need for Speed: The Run. There's I think only one time in the entire game. I actually played the whole thing. It's actually a decent game, but there's one time in the entire game where you get out and you actually go on foot to like run away from the police and stuff, and it happens in Chicago. And it's so like it's such an when I saw that when the original trailer, I was like, "Yo, I'm in, I'm bought." Like that's it.
That's
Like this
right.
is Chicago. This is my hometown. So I get that. That's so dope. I appreciate the
Thank
hell
you,
out of
man.
that.
Yeah, I wanted to again because I mean anybody who's from Michigan always catches it. They always catch it, and they're just like, "Wait a minute, are you from that town, or do you?" I mean, because the town itself was also named after a Native American chief, and in my on my mother's side there is a Native American Cherokee Indian bloodline too. So it was also another way to kind of just pay homage to that part of my heritage as well. So, but again, man, like we try to do everything that's just outside the box and non stereotypical superhero storytelling format because to me like a character that has like a name, a Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, it's cool, but it's been done a billion times
Right.
over. And why can't you be a superhero with like your regular identity? Why can't you just be a regular hero? Like, because I mean, like, think about even when you look at like the Boys, for example, on
Right.
Amazon Prime, they have these superhero names, but they're literally walking around with no mask on. So it's like even if you saw them on the street, you'd know who they were. And it's like eventually, oh yeah, I worked with Todd back in state police in 1998. So it's like, why all the smoke and mirrors? Just like rock out with your regular, real name as your hero name because you're a hero and your name doesn't define you as being a hero. It's the actions of the character.
See, I like that. That's a really interesting take because even characters that people know their name and have known their name the whole time, like you look at the Fantastic Four, everybody knows who the Fantastic Four is, but they still have superhero identities, right? Like Johnny Storm becomes the Human Torch, and
It's,
there is a feeling of that disconnect. There is a separation. Like Johnny Storm is the like ladies' man, and he's a hothead, but then like the Human Torch is a superhero. He goes and he saves people's lives.
it's
And it's
right.
like there's still that kind of disconnect of those characteristics. So having just like his name be his name, he's just Kale. That's it, it.
Absolutely.
It connects all that. It makes it all one person, and I dig that. I mean, like it'd be weird to watch Bruce Wayne jump out of the shadows and be like, Commissioner. He's like Bruce. Like, it's weird, but that's
Very true.
and
It,
that's what
it, it has to work situationally per the story for sure.
right, right. It's very interesting. I think they use that to kind of humanize characters like that, especially like a Batman that's like mystery and shadows, that kind of stuff. I think they use his friends knowing who he is and people who do know his identity. Those are the moments where like if he's kind of out of it, people like lean into him and they're like, "Are you okay, Bruce?" Like
That's right.
they humanize him that way. So having the Kale's name just be Kale, and there's no hiding behind anything. There, all the vulnerability is there just as much as all the power and strength. And
Absolutely.
it's intriguing. It's intriguing at least, like at the very least, it's intriguing, and it's an interesting way to approach it. And I'm excited, man. I'm so psyched. I've I came across you through following a Instagram page. I think this is how it went down. I was following an Instagram page, and it's called United Black Heroes,
That's right.
and I saw one of your pieces because they promote other Black creators, and I think that's fantastic. Actually, the reason I followed them is because sometime back through everything that's been happening. I mean, if you're listening or watching and you are just getting around to understanding what's going on in this country, in this world,
Yeah.
get your head out of your ass. But there was there were people that were talking about like using your platform to promote people and promote Black voices. I mean, there's just something to that. And even I don't have a huge following. Like I think I have like 320 people on Instagram. But to me, is like those 320 people. If I am able to introduce someone to them, all the better. Even if it's somebody that has a ton more followers than me, even somebody that already has like a whole career, like people don't know that artists and creators and filmmakers and all these people that they don't know that they exist. Everybody falls into their own little niches, and that's why like I was literally kind of kicking myself for not knowing about this series sooner, because this is like 100% right up my alley, right? This is I'm like everything about it is I'm like dope. Yes, 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 yes. Checks every single box for me, So I'm like,
Thank you,
dude, I could have been
man.
part of this. I could have been part of this hype train this whole time. Like I could have been part of this experience this whole time. So like, not
Well,
knowing just for lack of information, lack of knowledge. Like
yeah, and I'll take the blame for that honestly because I mean, we at Ray Comics. I mean, again, we approach business a little bit more old school, I would say, because again, like back in the day, the place that you would meet your favorite artist was a convention,
Hmm.
or maybe a book signing, or maybe they'd be at a store signing of some sort. So that's kind of always been our business model for the past, almost 5 years now, where we have just done the majority of our promotion in person, one on one. And I think for me, because I got to social media very, very late, it was always something that was a little daunting. And it was like, okay, well, I'm trying my best now to push the social media marketing as heavily as I can. The Kickstarter was probably our biggest push to kind of like spread ourselves throughout different markets as much as possible. I mean, I did absolutely everything during this Kickstarter. I was on 4 podcasts a week. I was on a whole bunch of different news sites like Bleeding Cool and The Beat, and I also even jumped on the newscast. Like we did so many different things that were really, really cool and a lot of fun to just spread the knowledge about who we are. Because again, the people we have a huge fan base that's in person, one on one,
Yeah.
because like I said, you're a pretty cool guy, and ultimately, like if you and I met at a con, we'd be just talking shop, talking comics, we'd be hanging out,
100%.
like a genuine connection. And I think for me, genuine connections will always trump online connections,
Yeah.
because you can have a cool impression online, you can entertain people, but it's like why people will follow you for 5 years or more, decades and change. And that's why McFarlane or Jim Lee or any of these people, even somebody like Rob Liefeld, has a following, because there are people who loved their work
Yeah.
from 20, 30 years ago, and they're not really going anywhere because they met them back in like 1992 when everything started. And it's a really fun thing for fans to take that journey with you. So I think what's cool about these podcasts, though, is that we do get to meet one on one in a socially distant space
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of build from
It's a
there.
different kind of year. It's a different kind of
That's
year.
right.
I was worried about it, honestly. I was worried about the convention scene. As soon as they said game over, I was like I know I have a lot of friends, like people I consider to be friends. I mean, I've been doing conventions for 10 years, 15 years. Like I don't even remember when
Right.
when I started. And it's been, I've met all these people that, I connect with, and we only see each other at cons, but it's like we'll have a 15, 20, 30-minute conversation about comics and the industry and their book and whatever. And it's been like, it's been super rewarding kind of being part of that scene, because I had conversations with people for years. They'd be like, yo, let me, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And I would get the pitch, and I'm like, you know what? It sounds dope. Do you have a trade? Because like
Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago, I got rid of all my floppies. I just didn't have the space for them. I needed the closet they were in. I had 30 some odd short boxes. I got a lot of comics,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's a lot of comments.
yeah, and I got rid of them. But I was like, this is still my shit. Like this is still my stuff. Like I love this. So I I was like, I'm gonna collect trades. Like I have to stick with trades. I even stopped collecting prints because I'm like, I'm out of wall space. My wife gave me this space down here and one room upstairs. That's it. That's all I
That's
get.
it.
So I have a finite amount of wall space. And
That's
so I
right.
moved to sketchbooks. I moved to sketchbooks and art books and that kind of stuff. So like when people, when artists don't have a sketchbook, I'm like, yo, you should make a sketchbook. Like I guide them in that direction. Like I want to give you my money, but like I
Yeah.
need it to be in a format that I can consume. So
Yeah. We're going to be eventually transitioning into building trades as part of our business model. It's one thing because ultimately, trades are easier to carry. They're easier to stock. I mean, obviously, people
yeah,
get the complete story. There's lots of upsides to having trades. I mean, again, we're almost at the end of the first arc of Okemus, and with it, after 5 and 6 are done, we're going to be collecting those into a trade, and then we'll probably be doing the next book we'll release. We'll probably do it in like a mini trade form or a full trade form, one of the two.
yeah, and I dig that, and that's the kind of thing. Like honestly, even if we had met each other at conventions, and I feel like we had to have at some point. And
Maybe,
and
man.
I would have
That
I would
said,
have
I
told you
feel
the
like I would
same
have remembered
story.
you
Like
though.
I would have told you the
Yeah.
same story. I've been like, I want to, but I don't collect floppies, and that's
That's
exactly
right.
where it would have been. And that's why I appreciate that you have the digital copies available through the site. Like that's there is a incredible amount of people that don't.
That's right.
There's a couple local guys that have been doing a book for a long time. It's they have like a set finish point, but their artist is I think overseas, so like it's just like a long process to get a book done. So
That's right.
I'm like, when's the trade coming? They're like, well, we're on issue 6. It's a 12 issue series, and I'm like, all right. And then I'm like, if you got digital,
A
let's jump
mini
on the
trade,
digital.
like collected. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, if you got digital, and they're like, yeah, we're looking into it. I'm like, it's at that point, I was like, it was 2019, bro. Like, you gotta had been looked into it. Like,
Yeah.
like
Years and years.
digital,
Yeah, I
digital
mean,
is digital is how you're gonna get a ton of new people because
that's right.
like $2-3 online, that's nothing to people. People blow that. People buy that
That's
on
right.
gems and apps, Candy Crush or
Mhm.
whatever. Like
No, you're
people
absolutely right,
blow that
man.
money all the time. So like just to give them something valuable, and that's why I appreciate that you have this. I'm like, and it came with 2 covers. I'm only showing the one because I like the other one better, and I don't want people to see it unless they buy it. So y'all should buy it. Uh, uh,
That-
but like it comes with like you have more, and you have an opportunity to do more with it, and just reach a wider audience, and that's why it's a game changer. And you didn't wait for what's their face Comixology, and again another thing that I appreciate because I remember having conversations with people that don't show up at conventions no more. They don't have no like their book fell off. They don't have the following anymore because they were like, oh, I'm waiting on because oh, I don't have a trade, and I'm like, well, I can't. I can't bring in stuff that I'm gonna give away or sell. Like that's just kind of a lose-lose situation for everybody. Like I'm not collecting anything of
for
yours,
sure.
and I'm just throwing away money at that point. But I was like, is it digital? Because I'll read it digital. And they're like, oh, I submitted to Comixology. It's this whole process. They got to format it. It's been 4 months. And I'm like,
Yeah.
4 months? Like,
And
that's excessive.
PDFs go a long way, man. I mean, like if you've got, any type of, e-reader,
Mm-hmm.
Kindle, Apple, or any of those, the janky ones that they sell for $20. I mean, you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
read a PDF. So you got to have PDFs. And I think, I mean, I had a conversation with a newer creator about this too, because what I find though, it's kind of a production thing because I have experience working in, print production and art production
Mm-hmm.
through, my internship at Marvel. I was a, college student
Oh, wow.
back in like the late 2000s, and I interned for Marvel a year from 2009 to 2010.
Oh, that's all.
And I was, trained in print production. So I understood the mechanics of how to put a comic book together on my own, how to, you know, generate interactive links to it, how to create PDFs. Like there's all these things that I learned when being a part of Marvel. So I translated that experience directly into Ray Comics, and like I said, PDFs are such an incredible thing, man. And just to kind of give you an idea of what was going on in 2009 at the Marvel headquarters, that they were basically having interns scan old books, like old Marvel Masterworks, old books from like 40 or 50 years ago. They were
Yeah.
scanning these books and having the interns, transpose them into PDFs so people could jump on the Marvel site and download digital PDFs to read. Like that's how important it was at that time that they were stressing that component. So again, like if you are a comic creator and you have your printer doing everything for you, because sometimes the printer will have in their batch of services not only the printing part, but you're sending them the JPEGs or the TIFF files or whatever you have your pages formatted in, and then they will assemble everything on their own. But basically, for me on my end, I do all that for them. So
Right.
all I send them is a completed, PDF file with crop marks and print marks and bleeds and gutters and also coloring, so because I understand that process here. So
Yeah.
essentially I'm giving them an end, like an end file that they can do what they can print from. All they have to do is press print and then chop it up and then do
Yeah.
whatever else they need to do from there.
See, that's what's up. Like having that kind of information and being able to just go straight to the end. Like
That's right.
it's very important because you can strike out on your own. You can do your own thing. I think that's where a lot of people are getting caught up in the indie space. Is, oh well, I remember when I always like to tell the story because it's ridiculous. My like magnum opus comic that I've written. Well, let me rephrase that. I have plotted, not written the whole thing, but it is I think 107 or 110 issues. It's a lot of story.
That's right.
My original plan, and this is going back to like 2006. My original plan was I'm gonna go to Marvel. I'm gonna get a meeting. I'm gonna be like, all right, all or nothing, 10-year commitment, And the girl I was with
I
at the
love it.
time was like, they're gonna throw you out of the building. What are you talking about? You can't ask someone for a 10-year commitment coming off the street. Like you can't ask a person for a 10-day commitment coming off the street.
I mean, I hear that, but at the same time, like I think, because we're in an industry that's relatively male dominated, I mean, you just got to have balls. So it's, for lack of a better term, because if you, and it's interesting because there, have been comic book artists that aggressively get in the room with, comic book executives. Just they're artists, they're writers, whatever they are, they aggressively get into rooms with these artists and the execs and stuff, and they're just like, well, this is what I want to do, and I'm ready to work. And I think Amanda Connor was one of those people who, if I'm my story's correct, it was her or Gail Simone, one of the two. But I feel like it was Amanda Connor who literally cornered one of the VPs at DC in a hotel room. Like
Huh.
there was a party or something after a con, and they literally just cornered him and said, I'm ready to work. This is what I want to do, and I'm ready to do it now. And they were so kind of blown back by her, her tenacity that they just gave her some her job. Plus, her work was cool, so it's
Right,
like a
right, right.
combination of the two.
See, that's a really cool story. That's the kind of I actually literally just finished filming a video about loving the process, and I'm a process junkie. Like that's why I collect sketchbooks. That's why I love like art books and like behind the scenes books for movies and stuff like that. So like that story, that's fantastic to me. I actually, what's funny, if it is Amanda Connor, what's ironic is I am not a big fan of her art, but that story makes me want to look at her stuff again. Like makes
That's
me want
good,
to,
man.
because
She's
that's like
she's
it like gives
tenacious.
more value to it. Because now it's like, all right, well, you got here through just like force. Like you just made it happen.
Kicking in the door, man. Kicking in the door. Because again, like if you're in a male dominated industry, I mean, like that again has historically not been so nice to females, not nice,
True.
not so nice to women,
Right.
whether young or old or whatever. It's like, sometimes you have to really, again, just think outside the box. And that's exactly what I believe she did. So it's a cool story, man. Like I said, I heard about that when I was an intern because, again, it was just comic book shop stuff. And the cool thing, too, for, all the people who are watching now, anybody who donated to my Kickstarter at $35 and up basically gets basically gets an entrance into my comic book masterclass. I'm doing a Zoom call similar to this where it's like I'm going to have as many people on as possible, and it's literally going to be me teaching everybody and telling everybody about my story and certain things like comic production, print production, working with artists, page rates, all this stuff. So I'm going to cover everything I know within this my masterclass. And again, because a lot of folks missed the last part of the Kickstarter, I had another $200 or $300 worth of backers come in post the Kickstarter being done because they're like, oh man, I missed it, or oh man, like my I didn't my check didn't come through on that day,
Right.
because
Right.
these things happen, and
Of
that's how it
course.
works. So I'm honoring anybody who wants to still get in on the Kickstarter, who still wants to get in on the masterclass, even though all this stuff is closed. You can, message me directly through the social media channels that Dolly Boar has set up. And you can, ask me, and I can basically send you an invoice for what those services are, what those rewards are. And you can get access to the masterclass and all of the cool stuff that we still have on the campaign now.
See, that's dope. That's awesome. I always appreciate that kind of extra period because obviously you got a lot of work to do with creating these books. You're finishing issue 4, or is issue 4 already done?
Issue 4 is already done, man.
Okay,
Like
so
it's the only thing that we're waiting on currently is just basically everybody to put in their surveys, and then also because there's a couple of like, people who's like maybe put their address wrong or their billing address or their zip code wrong. So like credit cards that like there's only a few small number that are like bounced. So we're kind of waiting on everybody's information to go through and be processed perfectly. Cause then that point I add everybody to the thank you page. And then that's when, we send out all the files to the printer. So that's going to happen within a week or two. And then, shortly after that, the fulfillment begins.
That's dope. See, like, and you're on top of it. You're putting the stuff out in a timely manner, and I think this is the kind of thing that, especially this being your first Kickstarter, I think next time around when it's, whether it's print costs for 5 and 6, whether it's the trade, whatever the next Kickstarter is, you're coming in with an enormous amount of goodwill, and it's the
Yeah,
kind
man.
of thing where I'm actually right now in a year holding pattern, a full year at this point for not receiving a book. So it's a comic book, um, because they
I'm
just
sure
haven't
I am
finished the
too.
last
I
issue.
donate to so many Kickstarters. It's like,
I feel you. I feel you. And I have been kind of a little more selective in some cases. Um, I had one that kind of I'm literally pending at this point 8 years. It's still not done.
yeah.
It's kind of an interesting at this point. It's just like an interesting case study for me. I've had ones
Yeah.
where it went through and they just they bailed on it, or if it was tech products are very weird in that space. But
Oh
like
yeah.
this book is a year out, and it's literally because they haven't finished the work. It's just the company. They're doing it through Devil's Due, and Devil's Due is like, yo, we can't print something we don't have. Sorry, and literally it's the artist. We're waiting on whoever the artist or the author, whoever's not done. Something's not done on their end. Devil's Due's like, yo, we got the pins ready, we got all the rewards ready. We just need the book, and then we'll get everything to
Devil
you.
Dudes is a big publisher too, man.
Yeah,
That's a shame to
yeah.
hear.
And it's funny
But
because
I
like
mean,
they were like, oh, you know what? Like we've made sure this doesn't happen again. So I'm thinking it's going to be a situation where they're probably going to require stuff to be done before they go to Kickstarter.
yeah, I mean, I personally, before I launched my Kickstarter campaign, I had been researching and doing a Kickstarter campaign like for a year prior. Just doing tons of homework and watching every video I could and talking to people who are incredibly successful at their campaign and just, picking their brain, like, what do you do to continue to, have these lucrative campaigns? Because what you want to do is you want to have one amazing campaign, but then you want to build on top of that with the
Yeah,
current audience. You want people to come back to you every single year, every single time you do a kick campaign. You
yeah,
want them to donate again. And I think the strongest way to do that is to build a solid rapport by delivering. And my whole thing was is that I'm not even going to even remotely think about doing a Kickstarter campaign until the book is 95 to 98% done. So by the time I actually spoke, when I filmed that video that you see on the Kickstarter, um, the book had been completely drawn. It was literally like, I think 1 or 2 pages away from final color, and then lettering was halfway done. So like you're like it was literally like we're looking at the finish line while I'm talking about it, because I can confidently speak like, hey, you guys donate to this campaign, you're gonna get it within 30 to 60 days. Absolutely, without a doubt, you're gonna get the book. And I think that in itself helps people really invest in you, because like, wait a minute, I don't got to wait, this is great. Because every single person who donates to a Kickstarter campaign, especially for comics, knows this struggle. It, you described it extremely detailed, and I can guarantee you there's definitely campaigns that I've backed that I have not received rewards on. I mean, there's quite a few mini comic book publishers that have been in hot water with fans for years because they have taken their money and they've never actually printed the books. And it's kind of a weird thing for me because I'm like, okay, well, I'm never gonna, buy any of your stuff again. And that's how you lose an entire legion of fans just like that. I mean, I know there was one company that had this whole humongous, universe plan, all these books, all these creators, and they made a whole bunch of money in Kickstarter, and they literally ran away with it.
oh
And
man,
there was this like I know there was lawsuits and all kinds of weird stuff. So it's just
Jeez.
like there's no faster way to completely destroy your reputation and as a person working within the comic book business, but you literally are boxing yourself into one space. And to this day, like I know who all those guys are because again, I remember seeing their stuff online
Right.
and I, and they still are getting work to this day, kind of like behind the shadows for through newer imprints. Like, oh yeah, I do logos, I do this, I do that. But a lot of the newer people don't understand the history that the
Right.
shady practices that some of these individuals have had in the past. So, but the people who have been around like myself, it's like, okay, like we know that we're not working with that gentleman or that person because we know what they're about. And like I said, it's reputation is like one of the biggest things. It takes forever to build up, but it's super easy to completely just knock it down and erase it like forever.
100%, man. 100%. That's very much how I'm looking at it. Like I've got one it was delayed. I know it was delayed for a good amount of time, but like this was his second. Is a book called Scurry. It's like a post. It's like I actually have not read the first volume, but I just like loved the art so much and the presentation. And the first volume was just like kind of like you're doing. Like it was basically done right as soon as the Kickstarter was done, and like we got it within a couple months at most. Like great presentation, like fantastic communication. So when he was like, "Yo, I'm jumping on. Like this is a 3-book series. I'm gonna do books 2 and 3 at the same time." And then right after the Kickstarter finished, like he had a death in the family, and everything kind of stopped. And everybody, every single comment was, "Yo, we get it. We get it. Do what you need to do. Get to us when you need to. Like get to
Yeah,
us when you can, because you got more important shit to do." But like, if he didn't have that, like if people had to wait a year for the first one, not his second one, maybe it's not the same. It's different. I
yeah.
know there are people who, if they do come back with a third volume, this the one that I'm waiting on now, the big one that I've been waiting for like a full year, that through Devil's Due, like I've been waiting on it for a year, but I bought it because I loved the first volume, loved
Hmm.
it. So like I'm bought into the universe. It's like this
That's
same kind
right.
of madness that I get when they came out with the Justice League movie, and then all of a sudden there wasn't going to be a part 2, and we never got to see Darkseid, and I was like, y'all, I'm giving y'all hours and dollars. Now I don't get to see Darkseid. We're not gonna see Justice League Part 2. I don't get Ben Affleck Batman as a movie. Like, guys, like I have
Yeah,
investment in this. I have investment. I have emotional investment. I'm not. This is not
I
cool.
mean, I totally agree with you, man, and that's why I think I've been very hesitant to watch any DC properties because their film universe is just so up in the air and kind of not very consistent. And the movies that I liked, a lot of people didn't like. Like I liked Aquaman a lot, but a lot of people seem to have.
You know
It's
what's
a
funny? I
weird
still
thing to
haven't
say.
watched it. I still haven't watched it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's some. First of all, visually speaking, it was actually a very beautiful movie. The special effects are incredible. I thought the acting was good. I'm not a fan of Jason Momoa at all.
Really?
Uh, I'm not. I do. To me, he's like, again like one of those guys that doesn't really have to act because he's got like a persona because he's big, buff, and girls like him. So it's like he doesn't necessarily have to be an actor. And even people say that him
That's
and Vin
funny.
Diesel are very similar. So, which I understand the point because
Oh wow.
but at the same time, it's like you know like when you think of like, okay, what's a good Jason Momoa movie? And to me, Aquaman is his best movie. Like he did really, really good in that movie. The action was fantastic. The special effects were really cool. And I think it was always a question to me, how would they pull off being underwater? Because essentially they're behind a blue screen in the studio lot or wherever they're at.
Right.
And I think they did that very, very well. It's believable. It makes sense. And it's just a cool movie. So I personally liked it a lot. I thought it was great. But again, people that I've talked to people about that, like, oh, I loved Wonder Woman and Aquaman was trash. And I'm like, I completely couldn't stand the Wonder Woman. I hated it. So it's like,
Wow.
it's to teach their own, man. I think that's what it is.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But I think we can all agree that Suicide Squad was terrible,
Terrible.
top to bottom. I think everyone's on the same, except for my wife. My wife is insane. Apparently, she watched a different movie. We came out of it. She's like, "I like that." I'm like, "You're crazy! Like that was not a good movie."
Yeah. I think sometimes if you have like a certain level of disconnect from the character and from the source material, then you enjoy it a little bit better because and I'm just saying this is not what, I'm not sure what your wife's
Yeah, yeah.
connection to the source material is, because maybe she's a huge comic book fan, but I just know everybody in my space that doesn't necessarily read comics and sees movies like, oh, that's pretty cool, and I'm like, well, it didn't work because of this and because of that and because of that, and it's like, I don't know, it's weird to step away from a character and what you know about it and just kind of like open your mind to something, a new possibility. And I think you can easily get violated that way. because
You know what? That makes perfect sense. Like you
I
say
mean, look
that,
what
and I
they
like it.
did with
Like just
Fantastic
makes connects
Four.
all the dots to me. It connects all the dots for me because it's like the reasons that I hate it are probably not that bad if you're an outsider. If you don't know the
That's
things that
correct.
I know, if you don't know that Amanda Waller will outright kill any of those people on a stiff breeze, like like if you don't know that, maybe you don't hate her as much, and maybe she's not the scariest person in that movie. Because to me,
That's correct.
Amanda Waller is the most dangerous person in the DC universe. I don't care about nobody. I don't care about
Absolutely.
Batman. I don't care about nobody else. Amanda Waller will kill Damian Wayne just to prove a fucking point. Like
That's
that's
right.
how I feel about her. So like I think they did a great job with her, except for they did not. Everybody else was like they try to make them redeemable. And I'm like, they're bad guys. It's okay if it's just a gun to their head and do it or I'll kill you. But all of a sudden,
Yeah.
everybody's got a
I-
sob story, and I'm like, I don't care. Like,
yeah. It's the whole like, humanizing the villain thing. And I think it only works with certain characters. And I
yeah,
think, Harley Quinn, Deadshot, some of these guys, Killer Croc, they're never supposed to be good guys. They're never supposed to be humanized. You're not supposed to really relate to them. It's just kind of like, and that's why I think the very first couple of Suicide Squad comics that I picked up years ago, I really liked, because I'm like, okay, these guys are bad guys and they feel like bad guys that are kind of in a weird situation that
yeah.
they don't necessarily want to be in. So I totally get that point, man, and I think I understand DC's trying, but I think they just have to try a little harder. And my thing has always been this: stick to what you're good at. Marvel's good with
Yes.
continuity. Marvel's
Yes.
great continuity. They understand continuity in various forms. Because even if you pick up a book years and years later, there's still a relatively good amount of continuity that you can pick a newer one up later and still kind of know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Where DC has so many different types of reboots and revisits and alternate Earths and alternate characters. It's like, why not just focus on doing side stories, like literally one shot movies like this is, and to me this is just, it baffles me that DC has never ever thought of this, because that's where their strength lies. Think about Gotham by Gaslight, think about
Oh
Batman
my
the Long
god,
Halloween, think
dude.
about
Th-
Superman Red Sun.
They were talk. There were rumors about there being a Batman Long Halloween movie, and I was just like, if they do that, it needs to be just translated onto screen because I don't want to see. Because I think they were talking about it being one of the next like animated feature, and I was really like apprehensive because they've really fucked those up. They had really good ones for a while, and then once they started pulling from the New 52 storylines and they started like mashing storylines together, it became messy. It became really, really
Yeah,
messy, and the animated features were just like all right, it's not bad, but like it's not a good story. I actually just because DC Fandom just happened and they had it for free. It was a free screening. I watched the new Superman. What it was, Man of Tomorrow or whatever it's called, the one that
hmm
just came out. It actually felt like a single complete story. Like it wasn't this like disjointed thing. So that gave me a little more hope for a Long Halloween movie because I love that story. I love that story. I was gonna say almost, but I definitely love that story more than I love Kingdom Come. And Kingdom Come has like a unique place in my heart because that book is how I met my brother. Like obviously not my real brother, like not my blood brother, but like that's my boy. Like
yeah,
that's my brother for that forever. Like that's how I met him. He was like we were at college and he was reading that book and that's how our conversation started. And like
that's
I
right.
love that book and Long Halloween trumps it just because it's so good as far as storytelling. Like
That's
every
right.
storytelling element of that story is fantastic. And to kind of to swing back around to your book, which is the kind of stuff that I see in this is great storytelling. And right now on the screen, I've got his transformation sequence when he first starts the fight with the sentries, and how it breaks down the kind of ease where like he's clearly been waiting for a fight. Like Kale has been walking and he's like, I'm looking for a dude. You guys are in my way. Let's just get this done. And
Exactly.
you see his power level is there even without seeing like immediately the display of it. But then again, we talked about earlier, it humanizes him. Like he is Kale and he's a human, he's a person, and he has mistakes. So he gets a little cocky, he gets cut, you know? And I appreciate that because it's like he didn't just come in, first issue and he's just stomping dudes, like he's not just killing it and, just brush the shoulders off, let's go, I'm good. Like he's not that guy. He's human and he talks about like he's been doing this for 3 years. And it kind of, when you see that mistake made of like, well, I've been, you see that kind of ego that people have. I've been doing this for 3 years. I know what I'm doing. And then like his first fight after a while gets hit, takes a hit.
That's
Like
right.
it's not the same. Maybe I need to get my shit together. Hold on.
That's right. Yeah, man. I mean, my whole thing is making each and every character relatable and human. And I try to put all the people I know, little bits of myself, little bits of family in these characters because, again, I want them to feel like real people. And I think the biggest issue that with a lot of these bigger, the big two, some of their characters is that they just don't feel very real. And one of the reasons why I think that Okemus, sticks with people is that there's a resonance there that it hits people on specific levels, and we've all been bullied, we've all gone through hardships, we've all you know felt ourselves a little bit. There's all kinds of like human things that are happening to this character in this book. So I just I encourage everybody to take a moment to read it. It's super easy. Again, if you don't want to do the trades, you can get the PDFs online. Again, if you want to be a part of the Kickstarter, which is, again, we're still we're getting ready to do fulfillment, so now is still a hot time to get involved with the Kickstarter by messaging me directly, and I'll send you an invoice that includes shipping and your books and whatever else you want, and we can get you taken care of with everything that we have to offer.
You could definitely make sure you could use the links that are right down this way. I can't even point right this way, and I will also have on the video, if you're watching the video, down in the description that's linked, so you can directly get to those pages. Uh, I'm so stoked for this. I'm like the like my thing is the way I don't want to give it away, but like you have that final fight in the Zero issue, and I've got a piece of it here on screen. When he gets that sword active, that big splash page, super dope scene, and it's like where that goes, and I'm like, oh wait, what's this? And then knowing that we're now stepping back, I'm like, all right, let's go down this journey because I want to see what that next part is. I want to see what that next level, when he kind of levels up there at the end. I'm like, what's this mean? Does he have,
That's right.
kind of, because there's little hints that are dropped throughout the story, kind of like that there's a relation to these creatures that he's fighting, and I'm just it's the kind of storytelling that keeps you guessing and also keeps you interested. I one of my favorite reads of a book, and this was just like prose novel. It's actually one of now I think I don't even know like 15 or 20 books by what's his face, James Patterson.
Hmm.
He did the Alex Cross series. He also did the Women's Murder Club series, and that's the first book in that series. Every single chapter at the end, I was like, let's go. Next chapter. Like
That's
it's
right.
not it's there is no kind of lull. You're not like, all right, whatever. It's not, I'll get to it when I get to it. I was like stealing minutes at work. I was on phone support. So I'm like having customers talking to me and I'm like, yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, we'll get that out to you. And I'm like reading, reading pages because I'm like, I gotta see what's next. And
That's awesome.
that's the kind of feeling I get out of this is it really like I want to see what's next. I'm interested in where this is going, and just the little bits and pieces. I'm like, all right, what does that mean? Like, why how could they be related? What's going on? Like, what does that mean?
That's
And
right.
it's the kind of like universe building stuff that I'm really into personally. Like I love like the bits and pieces. I love knowing, you know, I that's why like everybody hated the first two seasons of Shield, Agents of Shield. I
Yeah,
actually liked them. I felt like they were perfect because I'm like, this is the
I
kind of
agree.
boring ass shit Shield would be doing when they're not with the Avengers.
That's
like,
right.
like they're just checking out,
Because
calls. they're
yeah,
they
because
got cases.
after the later seasons were a little weird to me, but I totally agree. The first two or three were pretty decent. I think they did a great job.
Yeah, they it's funny because they it became more of a superhero show later on, and honestly, six possibly the best season of television you'll ever watch. Like as far as
Wow,
superhero TV, I think it trumps a lot of the CW stuff. It does not trump Crisis because Crisis to me is just like what Infinity War and Endgame was. It's just like the culmination of so much. So like
that's right.
Crisis on Infinite Earths was just like I was just geeking the whole time. Like I'm just like yes, yes, yes. Who else is showing up? Let's do this. Like
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, I think probably one of the cool. Continue. I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say one of the coolest moments that for me was really cool, was really dope, was just to see Brandon Routh back in the Superman costume, but in that
Yeah.
Kingdom Come like style of that Superman to me was just really cool to see him back, and I thought he did well with the character, and I feel like he's kind of underrated too as an actor because he's been in so many different things, but I
Yeah.
just think that he's done a pretty solid interpretation of the character overall. Not the best, but I mean definitely pretty solid to get excited about and see on that property. So I was with it for sure.
I liked his portrayal. What I didn't like about the movie that he did, the Superman Returns,
Yeah,
it tried really hard to be Superman 3,
that's
and
right.
he did a really when the first time I watched it because I was working at Radio Shack at the time, and we were displaying like Direct TV or something, and it was just on TV on one of the TVs, and I'm like, oh, I think one because I was like around the corner. I was like, oh, I think one of the original Superman movies is playing because it sounded like Christopher Reeves.
That's right.
It felt like it around the corner. I was like, oh no, it's the new one. Why did I think? I was like, so weird that I thought it was Christopher Reeves because he was doing his best to be Christopher Reeves.
That's right.
Because
He was doing an impression, and again, like even was Kevin Spacey, he was doing like a combination of Gene Hackman and Michael Rosenbaum,
yeah,
and to me, like it just I had lots of issues with that movie just because there was all this really cool talk at the time. Smallville had been like this amazing series that was incredibly
yeah,
groundbreaking at the time, and I personally thought, along with lots of other folks, that it makes perfect sense to just transition into a film category with all these same characters. You already have people who have been watching it for a decade. You have a huge fan base that loves this show, so just bring them to the movies. Like it's really simple because
yeah.
you already have a character that was ideal for it. Because I still think that Tom Welling was probably one of the better choices for Superman in terms of someone who could really humanize that character. I think he did a very, very good job. So
Agreed.
again, it goes back to the topic of listening to your audience for one, and making stories that are cool, and then also are that make sense for the universe. And I think that's what we definitely try to do here at Ray Comics, is just listen to what people like and what they want, and make books that we know are going to be really dynamic and powerful and that are going to relate to folks.
That's always the best. I've always felt the most at home at Marvel because Marvel characters to me are human. They have Peter Parker's got to deal with bills. Saying he's got girl problems, like normal shit, like shit everyone has to go through. So like,
That's right.
but like Hal Jordan has girl problems, but they're like space alien girls, with a third eye or something. Like it's different.
It's
It's just a
fun.
different feeling. So
Yeah.
it's never the same. But like when Peter Parker has to like rush downtown and he forgot his web shooter, so he's got to take a taxi. Like that's normal shit. Like you forgot your keys. They're upstairs, but you can't go back. Like it's too late. You got to go.
Very,
Like you
very
got to get on
true.
the train or whatever. Like there's just there's more of a human connection to it, and that's why I appreciate that. You have his name just be his name, and just that immediate connection of my name is Kale. Like he's not going around like I'm Superman. And like I said, I was watching the Superman. I always forget the name. Man of Tomorrow movie.
Yeah.
And when he comes out, he's like, "I am Kal-El of Krypton," and I was like, "Yeah, it's funny because like you're never Kal-El of Krypton. Like the only person I like in that whole situation is Clark because he's the one that cares. Kal-El is just some dude. Like some, it's like it's separate. Like it's hard to relate. Again, he's an alien. Clark humanizes him.
Right.
Clark
Yeah,
humanizes him, and
I
we like
think
those stories the best.
they do a better job of that type of archetype with Dragon Ball Z, in my opinion, because obviously, Goku,
Mm-hmm.
his Saiyan, his alien name is Kakarot, and he's never known himself as that,
Yeah,
but he knows that his name is that. But it kind of goes with this expectation of something, but he never really embraces that expectation. He embraces the human side. So
that's
I
true.
think how they handled that narrative between that character was just because again he is a Superman like character,
100%.
um but at the same time they do it a little bit better. I think they figured it out in terms of like that dichotomy between the two.
That's a fantastic point. You know, the internet is always going on about Goku versus Superman. So like that's a great comparison. I never thought about it that way, but that's 100% true. Like he
Yeah.
very much, and that is the difference. Like you dude, like you make very good points, sir. Like I've got new shit to like talk to other people about now. Like I'm gonna go back and be like, this man
Well,
explained this to me.
what really is going to blow your mind though is once you start looking at Invincible, the comic book series Invincible, and how that's a
I love that
direct
series.
derivative of Dragon Ball Z, and like just yeah, I mean it's a direct derivative in terms of story, in terms of like the planet, the warrior race, like everything about Invincible is like Dragon Ball Z for Americans. That's pretty much what that story is. But again, most times in comics, new ideas aren't really all that new. They're kind
Of
of just
course,
recycled and tweaked and kind of altered a little bit,
of course.
you know?
Yeah, I mean that's that there is, you know, some wise person somewhere said it. There are no original ideas. Everything is a derivative of something else. Everything is a modification of something else. You know, like I you know the biggest ones are you look at people that talk about the Avatar movie, not the Airbender movie, not that garbage, but the Avatar movie, James Cameron's, and the joke is always, oh, you mean Blue Pocahontas? Like, 'cause
Pretty much
that's all that
the
movie
same
is,
story. Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And then like
Same story.
what are their original contributions to the story? Unobtainium. And the first time I heard it, I wanted to like turn the movie off. I was like, no, I can't. They're gonna talk some shit like unobtainium. Like that's it's hard for me to like believe this movie because they're talking like somebody like an intern came up with that, and that wasn't the writer, and they were like, no, we can't call it this. This is a real thing. We need it to be something different. They're like about unobtainium, and they were like, yeah, sure, whatever.
That's crazy, man. What the hell?
It's just, but yeah,
My
no,
lord.
that's why it's always interesting to me to look at independent properties and kind of see like where the inspiration is and where it takes it and where it goes with it, because there are elements of, like I said, I have the scene again where he's transforming. Some of that looks like a Venom, like with the way the Venom suit comes out, and there is that understanding of in my head. I'm like, all right, that's kind of how Venom does it, but like this is clearly different. It's a whole different thing, and it is Power Ranger like, and then he's got the Power Ranger like the Power Ranger. He's got the suit that gives him the power and the weaponry, but at the same time, like he's not screaming out his transformation code. He's not, it is a different take on everything. Like all the little kind of bits and pieces that it inspired it are visible, but they're not what's owning the property. They're not what's owning the identity of the character of the story. Like you see a lot of that in different stories. Like when Marvel did the Sentry. The Sentry is Marvel's Superman, another of their Superman. But like the Sentry is, yeah, he's super strong and he's got all the powers, but then his character and his personality and how he is the Sentry and everything else besides the power set, completely different character. Like yes, he is Superman like if you have never read the Sentry. If you've never read the Sentry on any page of a comic book, sure, he's just Superman. He's a blonde Superman. But then, like, if you read a single page of the Sentry, you know this dude is messed up, and there are
Yeah,
so many different things about him that you would like. You never once have I read the Sentry and been like, oh, Superman, like because it's just a different
yeah.
story.
The character itself has lots of layers, and yeah, man, I'm glad you caught that though, because I mean, ultimately, one thing, because I don't think I've had a chance to tell people a little bit about the book. So just quickly, just to run through,
Yeah.
Okemus, it's a sci-fi martial art action story about a young guy that has a latent superhuman ability that could potentially save the human race, and he's being pursued by warriors, these mechanized, Sentai-esque type warriors from the future that actually want to steal that power for themselves. Tons of action, drama, suspense. Again, Oakmas is a book that's like a love letter to the 90s. It's, the era that I grew up in. It's the era that I discovered comics in. It's the era that I love. It's my favorite time for comic books to this date. And there's lots of really cool things in there. I mean, again, I grew up watching, anime and reading manga and comics and games all at the same time. And you're going to get that 90s nostalgia within Oakmas. You're going to feel that. Again, the Sentai genre spans more than just, our one favorite property that everybody loves, but you've got Kamen Rider, you've got Ultraman, you've got Beetleborgs, you've got what is it? VR Troopers. There's a million different
Yes, VR Troopers.
Sentai, yeah, Sentai-esque, shows that were incredibly popular in the 90s. So the concept of what those shows were are distilled and kind of changed and altered and inspired in terms of what we did with Okemos. So you're going to get something that's familiar, but you're also going to get something that's incredibly unique in its own right. So I definitely encourage people to just take a chance on it, dive into it, see what's going on. Dalibor's got great taste. I can guarantee that if he likes it, you're gonna like it. So please jump on and take a look.
Definitely, I love like the fact that like you say that, and I'm like, yeah, that I've been pondering making like a whole video essay about why the '90s was the best era of entertainment, just
That's right.
because we had all of the stuff that I feel like in the last 10, 15 years we've talked about is like lacking. I feel like we had all that in the '90s. There's a lot of talk. We've had quite a bit of talk about like, oh, there's a lack of Asian leading men and women in movies. And I was like, yeah, but like
Hello.
we had. Oh, come on, Discord. What happened? I'm gonna have to cut it here. Are you back?
Think I lost you, man.
You paused for a minute. I see you. I see you moving. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
you paused on my end.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, no, Discord was doing so well. But like there's been talk in recent times of like, oh, there's a lack of leading Asian men and women, and in the '90s we had Jackie Chan and we had Lucy Liu, and like that was just an expectation for me. Like I loved seeing those people in movies, like seeing brand new movies with Lucy Liu, on the front. Like that was an expectation for me. So like, but it's funny because when people point it out now, and I'm like, that's true. Like, because we had Lucy Liu, we had Jackie Chan, we had see, he like quit and I forgot his name. He stopped doing it. He was in a lot. He did a lot of martial arts movies, but he did Jet Li. Jet Li was around for a long time. I loved a lot of his movies.
Right.
And then
Oh
he
yeah.
he retired. He retired out of the genre basically, and he stopped doing American movies. And it's like we had a lot of people, and then progressively which is an ironic statement, progressively we had fewer and fewer. And but in the '90s we had kind of like a golden era of like we had the best theme songs. Let's just be real honest. Every cartoon
Oh
had the
yeah.
best theme song. Like I still to
Yep.
this day I'll jam out to the Mighty Max theme song for the rest of my life. I love that theme song.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like, but
yeah.
we had all the cool stuff, and like we had people took chances. We had Kamen Rider didn't work out when they did it in the 2000s, but like,
That's right.
when they did Masked Rider, which was a Kamen Rider character, when they did Masked Rider in the '90s, it was. I mean, it wasn't successful. They didn't do more seasons, but like the people liked it. It tied in, and it was growing a universe, which is an unintentional way of me asking the question I was going to ask. As far as growing a universe, when I look at Ray Comics, that is an umbrella, that is a company, that is a publishing brand Okemus is the beginning, I presume, of something bigger. Is there an idea of going into more of a shared universe in future books, or is there more of a, like you said, one shot kind of thing? Everyone does their own thing, separate storylines.
It's a great question, man, and I love when people ask because honestly, we've got so many great um stories coming out of Ray Comics in the next couple of years. Like, and we're building on the universe. But again, just like we in our business model is, it's not something that people expect. And I think to me, the whole um building a universe for the sake of building it, where it's like, oh, we've got 10 characters and they have separate books and they team up into a Justice League book. It's the format of that is completely like, it's like plain white bread with American cheese on it. It's about as
It's true.
simple as you can get. It's
Very true.
about as expected as you can get. And I personally don't like to create in that format. Not that there's anything wrong with it. If you like that format, go right
Yeah.
ahead. But I think for me and our company, it's like we want to create universes that are as separate, but also, just serving the story. Because to me, it's like we're going to have two other books that are in the Okemus universe. We're going to have the Tessina miniseries, which is our first woman-led series. That will be an offshoot of the Okemus title. There's going to be Okemus Dark History, which is going to be debuted specifically in a trade paperback form once it's completed and done, not in single issues. And that will be the history of like Okemus before the current title. And then we're going to complete, the second arc of Okemus right after that. So those three books will be within that universe. But then we're also going to have a space book that's completely outside that universe. We're going to have a sex comedy book that's completely outside that
Oh wow.
universe. We're going to have a noir, like a steampunk noir type book that's completely outside of that universe. So we're literally just doing stories that are really cool, and we're building from an organic place. We're basically not saying, okay, how do we tie this back into the main series? Like, it's how about we just create a cool story? What is in here that makes you feel like, okay, this is going to be a great story? This is a story that I've always wanted to tell. And then you think about collaboration down the line. So there's lots of great stuff coming, from Ray Comics in the next couple of years. So I definitely encourage everybody to get on our mailing list or just follow us and just, keep your eyes peeled because it's all coming out really, really soon.
That I got to tell you also, there is something to be said about having a polished Kickstarter. I'm scrolling through the Kickstarter right now on the screen, and uh, everything, the presentation on this is fantastic, top to bottom. I did a recent podcast, and I talked to my buddy Mike Emirates, and we talked about a podcast that was not so polished, and the goal was obscene. It was a $20,000 goal for a single issue print, and
Wow.
I thought that was crazy. And
Yeah.
no real explanation of rewards. It was just kind of like, get these variant covers, and that, like, there was not any effort put into it, and it failed. It did not go through, and it was another thing where I'm like, I'm interested, but like the presentation is not there, and the effort is not taken initially, and I think there is definitely something to be said about like present your stuff, which is ironic because like I have a massive mess behind me, so like my presentation here is terrible, but like, when I'm gonna spend money with somebody, when I walk into your virtual space, it's nice to see that you took time to think like, oh, I'm gonna show off these figures, which those are so interesting to me, and I had to stop myself from like getting to that level because I'm like, I collect so much shit randomly that I'm like, sometimes I literally have had days where I'm just like, it's just collecting dust up there. Like, what are you doing with your life? Like,
For
so
sure.
I was, but like they're super cool, and I was like, oh, they're like pop figures. I'm like, people are gonna jump on this. People are gonna love it. So like, you had all these details in it, and these elements just displayed for everyone, and I think that's you just did a great job, honestly, top to bottom, and your communication has been above board. And honestly, when you mentioned the surveys earlier, I was like, I totally didn't fill out my survey yet, so like I got to do that. But it's like you presented a fantastic product. Obviously, you have
Thank you.
you've been working on it for a long time. This has been a series that has been around for a long time. I am the late person to this party. Like I'm coming in on issue 4. people been known about this. So like I'm so glad to be part of the journey now. I'm so excited to like see where it goes. I can't wait to read more, and it's 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 so incredibly important to do the whole process and do the whole process like right. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not
Right.
just enough to put a Kickstarter together. Like you have all these elements and like you were doing donations and stretch goals. Like you're gonna donate to women in comics. Like you're doing all this stuff that you didn't have to do. Like you could just collect a paycheck. Hey, here's we'll do another cover. We'll do another cover. We'll do a trade. Boom. I'm gonna collect this profit. People do that all the time. People just do a Kickstarter to collect profit. You
No,
put
you're absolutely
you
right,
you are
man.
like, hey, if you get to this level, we're gonna do some more shit. You're gonna get some more shit, and like it's it's a fantastic like you just did everything right, man. I don't know how else to say it. Like you did everything right. So like it's no
I
wonder that you're
appreciate that.
winning. It's no wonder that you cracked $20,000 on the Kickstarter. Go back to the top. I just want to see the final number here. Where are we at? Where are we at? 21,716, and that's not even counting people who are jumping on and should jump on. If you're watching, if you're listening, should jump on. Links down below. Links in the podcast notes. Also at Ray Comics on Instagram, at TJ Sterling Art on Instagram. Definitely, definitely jump on this, guys. I'm excited. This game, this 8-bit game, I'm like, for all the retro gamers out there, I'm gonna be streaming it. Everybody needs to be watching this stuff. I'm so excited. Is it now? I have a question. Is it gonna be like an RPG style, or is it gonna be more like a fighter?
It's going to be a side scrolling, more like a well, that's what we're kind of building what it's going to look like now. Because I mean,
Okay,
we're trying to keep it simple for mobile and Android,
for
but I
sure.
will say that we're going to have like 8 to 10 levels, and it's going to be very much like in a Mega Man X form. So I think
That's
it's
dope.
more RPG ish than anything, but there's some fighter, some one-on-one fighting elements in there too. So very very excited about this. Again, we're talking with two different companies right now to try to make this thing happen, and I'm just excited, man. Like I said, it's first and foremost me just doing the stuff that we love. And I think I had tons of sleepless nights and high levels of stress coming up to this campaign, because I honestly didn't know what I was doing. And a lot I feel like you kind of fly blind on a lot of things. You do tons of research, and you have a general idea, but like a lot of that stuff that you research kind of like becomes muscle memory. You don't even realize you're doing it over time. So I will definitely say that it was a lot of preparation and time, sleepless nights, and really just wanting to make a cool looking campaign for you guys. Because to me, like I said, I want it to be simple, effective, and just really kick ass. So I'm grateful that a lot of people felt that that's what they got when they looked at it. So, you know, really cool art. Again, the comics are really awesome. The story's great. Again, we've got, t-shirts that are specifically exclusive to the Kickstarter. We've got toys that are specifically exclusive to the Kickstarter. There's some really, really cool things that are only available through this campaign. And again, luckily, we are still accepting donations, and we're also accepting, if you want to place an order for one of the tiers, you can do that still, because we haven't started fulfillment yet. Once we start fulfillment, all that closes down, and then all whatever stuff we have left goes to the website. So there's still an opportunity to get it. But I mean, again, I recommend that everybody who wants to get on it now, before we start sending orders out, jump on it. Like, let's say you spend $35. There's $10 shipping, throughout the entire, US of A, and you get 4 free art prints with that. So 4 6x10 art prints that you can go on your wall for free. Comes with, the entire set of 5 books, for only $45, and then you also get access to my masterclass too. So it's like you get tons of added value, and the
Guys,
more and
guys,
more
can I
expensive,
just
more and
touch
more
on
free
that for
stuff
just a
you get.
second? I just want to interrupt you
Yeah,
for just a second on that. $45 shipped. You get 4
that's
prints.
correct.
I have looked at people for one print and they're like $20.
That's right.
And I look at
Yeah,
them and I'm like, are you serious with me right now?
I've never agreed with how that structure works, and let me tell you why. So I've been going to conventions since 2005. That's the very first con I ever went to was San Diego Comic Con. I've got
Oh
some
wow, wow,
family out
you
in
just jumped
California,
in.
so I mean, but that was the time when you could buy tickets to Comic Con the same day, and they were 50 or 60 bucks.
Oh
Like
wow.
now they're almost 400. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can kind of tell, and there's a wait list, and there's a million different things you have to hoops you have to jump through just to get a ticket, let alone participate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
times are different back in 2005, and you know, walking to a table, you were going to spend $20, $30 on print and, $5 in a comic book. I mean, that was kind of like this whole, it's fine art. You can frame it or it gets signed and it goes on your wall. And I do still feel that there is a level of truth to that. But at the same time, to me, a comic book is 10 times more valuable than a print because it's it's 10 times the amount of art. You're getting
Yeah.
way more art. You're actually getting a story,
Yeah.
and you're getting something that you can collect, that you can follow up on. And that's why I personally think that anything below $10 for a comic book, especially if it's a quality one, is just like you might be selling yourself a little bit short. I think you should charge at least $10, especially if it's a book like Okemus that's 36 pages. Like you're getting a lot of comic for a good solid price. And it's all the books come signed. So and I'll give you kind of an interesting uh scenario that happened after the first con I ever did. The first con I ever worked as a professional was 2015. So fast forward 10 years later, I sell the first prints of Okemus. I sell them out at San Diego Comic Con. We brought 400 copies, sold out of all of them, and I
Nice.
signed everything. Again, these are first prints, and everything after that was second print. So the very first comic book I ever did, the very first printing I ever had, someone bought it and put it on Amazon for $60, and this was a couple of years afterwards. So the value of it is there. Like I said, it's kind of an interesting thing because I mean I'm like shit, you could buy it from me for five for on my website for whatever the price is, but someone knows that this is the very first printing of this person's first comic book that they're charging $60 for it on Amazon, which is blows my mind. I still don't know who that person is, but more power to them. Hopefully they make a sale.
Hopefully they bought two copies. They can keep reading one. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's good, and that's it's this kind of stuff that people don't think about when they're looking at, when you're walking across a con floor, and especially Artist Alley. Like that's where I spend most of my time at conventions. Artist Alley is like, it feels like the right place to be at a Comic Con, especially now that everything's kind of gone more like media and like celebrities coming in, and like cool, you got a Ren Fair booth, but I don't really care about Ren Fair. I'm here for this. I'm here for comics. So like Artist Alley is
Appreciate you,
where
man. We need you. We need people like you.
and like Artist Alley is, that's where home is. That's like, to me, I'll take the first half of the first day, kill the show floor, because I'm not stopping in a lot of places. A fucking t-shirt booth takes up 45 spaces. Like I'm not stopping. I'm not buying a bunch of t-shirts.
Yeah,
Also, like everybody that sells t-shirts, except for one place. I bought a t-shirt one time at a convention because they had a 5X. But I always look at them. I'm like 2X. I'm like, do you see who's here? Like 2X.
this isn't the 2X crowd.
This is not the 2X. You can have 2X and 1X and small. Like, yeah, friends and girlfriends and children are coming, but like most of us are 2+X. Like,
That's right.
but it's just like I can't. I can't even if I want to buy from them. And at that point, I'm just like I'm trying to find. I'm trying to have the conversations. Like you said, that genuine connection. Talking to a celebrity. Like I've stopped at a couple celebrity booths in the past because the first one I ever talked to was Kevin Sorbo. We had just incorporated our company, and we were going through, and we were kind of celebrating, like we had incorporated that day. And we get to Kevin Sorbo, and I grew up on Hercules and all that kind of stuff, and he was kind of like, he's polite about it. And he was like, congratulations on the incorporation, like good luck in your business. And I was like, oh, that's dope. And I followed him on Facebook, and it was one of those things. I'm like, this dude is like super crazy hardcore conservative, and like does not make any bones about it. Like he is just on his like Facebook fan page just talking all that, and I was like, I can't with you, dude. Like I gotta step back from this nonsense because that's I just
Sure.
here I just want to talk about Hercules and Andromeda. That's all I want to see about here. Maybe when you're going to show up at a convention, not all this nonsense. Like you keep that shit at home. Like,
Yeah, man. It's just always interesting to again meet individuals at cons and again where they're at and what they're what, you know, because sometimes folks get into politics and all kinds of other stuff, and I think just keep it about the entertainment, man. Keep it
yeah,
about it, entertaining the people who are there to really get the stories, man. That's what it's about. It should be about that.
that's what we're there for. You know, I want to talk about the comic book. I want to talk about there's a group that's out of Chicago. I think it's called Unshaven Comics. They literally their whole thing is like ask me about my comic, and every con I'd walk by, and the first year they pitched it to me, I was like, you know what, it sounds interesting. Do you have a trade? And they're like, no. I'm like, I collect trades, and every year we that just had that end part of that conversation. They'd be like, ask me about my comic. I'm like, do you have a trade yet? And I would keep going because they don't have it. And we already had that conversation, but it was kind of like a nice back and forth. And I was walking by, I was like, do you have a trade? He's like, yes. And I'm like, let's talk. Because, like, that's when I bought it. And I had him on the podcast and we talked about it. And it was fun. It was, ironically, it was also a Sentai ish, like, that's funny. I didn't even realize that's where that story was going to go. But, like,
Awesome.
I like, like having those connections and, like, just being able to be like, hey, what's up? Like, I remember you. Like, that's cool. Because, like, I follow your art, you know, and or I've been reading your comics for a long time, and like having a conversation, and even that's why I appreciate people that are like at the Marvel level, being in the boots in the artist alley rather. Like I appreciate that because it's like it shows that it's just like you know T.J. Sterling and Jim Lee next to each other. Like I appreciate that because that's like these are the same people. These are the same, like, they're both creators. They're both artists. They're both people that deserve the same kind of attention. Like, this is not, you know, Jim Lee's not on a pedestal next to your, you know, tiny booth. That's not how it works. The tables are all the same height. You know, like
Right.
the
Right.
tables are all the same height. Everybody has to stack their books. Everybody has to display and bring in the audience. Like there are people I've seen people that like most people don't know, but I know their work from Marvel or DC or whatever, and I'm like, it's funny. There's no line. I'm like, I could just walk up to this dude. Like,
That's how it should be, man. That's how it was back in the day.
yeah, but then you have the superstars show up, and then there's a line around the aisle, and you can't get to the other people that are there. So
That's right.
it's weird, and I always think it's funny because it's like if you're gonna have a signing, go have a signing because like I'm trying to talk to the person next to you. Like they don't have this following, and the people in the aisle are just they're waiting for you. They don't care about that. So like
Oh,
I try
true,
to hit
man.
every single table at a convention because it's like to me that's like I said that's where home is at a convention. The artist alley like
Yeah, fingers crossed. Cons will be back in 2021, so then we can get back to our regularly scheduled
I hope
program
so, man. I
for
hope
sure.
so because I'm building ironically I'm building like a little like portable podcast rig, and I want to steal one of those empty spots because you know they be overcharging all the time, and people don't show up or they don't sell a spot. And I'm like, I just want to bring like a little fold out table, and just like bring in artists and stuff, and just do a podcast right there, just to steal one of
Whatever
the
it takes,
spots.
man. Whatever it takes. Like I said, guerrilla marketing. Sometimes you just got to jump all over it.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's up, man.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited. I wanna tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about this. I I'm like I said, I read Zero today, and I'm hyped. I can't wait to read more. I am excited about this universe. That game, I'm gonna crush that game. You watch me. You watch me. Put in like a
I
time
want to
element.
see
Watch
it,
me crush
man.
that
I
game.
want to see it
Watch me
for
crush
sure.
that game. Put in a time. Put in like a high score, like a speed run thing. That's
Let's go.
actually I'm gonna give you that right now. That's probably the best thing you could do for it because fucking platformer people they love their speed runs. I have a game out and it's a platformer and it has no elements of speed runs, and people are like, why can't you jump faster? I'm like, it's not a speed run game. It's just a game to enjoy. Like it does not all platformers
Sure.
have to be speed runs, but they love it. They love it. They jump on the speed runs. But like like I said, you presented a fantastic Kickstarter. That's why you won. I mean, like, the product speaks for itself. The Kickstarter is fantastic. I cannot wait for everything to come out. The other series, I'm like, noir, like you said, noir, and I was like, yes, please. Like,
Like I said, man, it's I appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me tonight, and I can again I'm very very excited to bring more and more to everyone through Ray Comics. Again, it's a business that I love. It's personal to me, and I make sure that every story that we deliver is something that everyone can relate to and get into. So it's good, wholesome, powerful, entertaining. It's all that stuff rolled into one. But ultimately, again, please check all the social links. Jump on. And thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure just chatting with you and being on the show. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
definitely, definitely. We'll have to do it when a trade comes out, and we'll talk about the whole story. We'll have
Oh
to.
yeah, you
We'll
already know.
we'll have to give it some time though, because I'm gonna want to get into nitty gritty. I get into the story. I told you that universe building, man. I'm gonna get into
For
that stuff.
sure.
Again,
Absolutely.
thank you for coming. Thank you for being on the show. All everybody watching, everybody listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure you click the links down below if you're watching the video. Make sure you check out at Ray Comics, at TJ Sterling Art, or just look up Okemus, Okemus, at Kickstarter. The page is still up, of course, and make sure you give them contact. Get the stuff. Get the stuff while you can. This is going up on Sunday.
Not at
Do you
all.
have an idea of when there might be a close date on this, as far as like when people might be able to still jump on?
Again, because we have not started fulfillment yet, fulfillment usually happens about 2 to 3 weeks after a campaign is done.
Okay.
So people have a good 2 or 3 weeks now to jump on to be a part of the Kickstarter rewards, because essentially we want to get as many orders as we can, then we want to start shipping out in a massive in bulk. So again, I encourage everybody who's listening to jump on it while you can, and or you will wait until it has to go onto the website, because it'll eventually be there, but a lot of the exclusive Kickstarter perks will not be there. So
Right.
again, you want to get on it, there's still an opportunity to do so. Just hit me up directly and I'll take good care of you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you again for being on, man. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.